Welcome to Sacred Seasons, a place where ancient stories breathe again and the voice of the earth still whispers through time. Here, we walk the wheel of the year, honor the old gods and goddesses, and remember the wisdom written in the wind, the fire, the soil, and the stars. Take a deep breath, open your heart, and step with me beyond the veil of the ordinary. Transformation never begins in comfort. It starts in a fracture, in the quiet moment when the familiar no longer fits and the mind senses a shift approaching long before the world can articulate it. Humans feel this tension as restlessness, confusion, or the subtle pull of something undefinable calling from beyond the edge of routine. When life begins to rearrange itself, the internal landscape becomes charged with uncertainty, and every choice carries a weight that presses against the psyche. This state is not weakness. It is the oldest signal of awakening, a stirring that demands attention because something within you knows that remaining the same is no longer an option. Hecate emerges precisely when the internal world trembles, not as a threat, but as the force that stabilizes the mind during transition. She is the presence that rises when identity loosens, when you feel suspended between who you were and who you are becoming. While many fear this psychological crossroads, Hecate governs it with authority, because she understands the nature of thresholds better than any other figure in ancient myth. She stands where paths diverge, not to impose a direction, but to illuminate the truth hidden beneath the surface of your fear. She reveals what your conscious mind tries to suppress and what your instinct already knows but hesitates to claim. The crossroads is not merely a symbol of external decision. It represents the inner conflict between stagnation and between the persona you present to the world and the unexpressed self waiting beneath it. Hecate embodies the intelligence required to navigate this conflict, offering clarity when confusion dominates the mind. Her torch is not a gentle light, it is a piercing flame that exposes the motives, desires, wounds, and illusions that shape your choices. Standing before her demands honesty. Any attempt to hide from your own truth becomes impossible in her presence because the crossroads magnifies everything you have tried to avoid. In ancient narratives, Hecate moves freely between worlds, walking through realms of gods, spirits, and the dead with the same ease she walks beside mortals. This movement symbolizes the psychological ability to navigate different layers of the self. She travels through shadow, memory, intuition, and instinct, without becoming trapped by any of them. When she stands before you, she invites you to do the same. She calls you to explore the vast territory of your mind with courage instead of fear, understanding that real transformation requires facing the unknown with full awareness rather than escaping it. Many imagine the darkness she rules as something sinister, yet her domain is not the terror of night, but the power found within what is hidden. Darkness in her realm is the space where insight is born. It is where you confront the thoughts that shape your life, the suppressed emotions that influence your reactions, and the forgotten parts of your identity that seek reincarnation. Hecate is not the creator of darkness. She is the guide who helps you move through it without losing yourself, turning confusion into direction and fear into strength. Her presence is often felt long before it is understood. You sense it when you stand at a major turning point, when your intuition becomes louder than logic, or when a deep internal pressure forces you to reevaluate the life you are living. You encounter her energy when a choice feels too heavy to ignore, when everything around you signals that a cycle has ended, or when you feel guided toward a path you cannot yet explain. She does not create these moments. She appears because you have reached them. The crossroads forms naturally from your experiences, and Hecate steps into that space because she governs the threshold between what was and what can be. The power of the crossroads lies in its honesty. It does not offer shortcuts or illusions. It shows you the truth of your situation, the consequences of your decisions, and the identity you will shape depending on the direction you choose. Hecate holds her torch high, not to decide for you, but to ensure you cannot walk forward blind. She gives the gift of clarity, the insight that pierces through confusion and reveals the real path beneath the noise of fear and hesitation. As her flame rises, the atmosphere around you sharpens. The indecision that clouded your mind begins to shift. The possibility of change becomes real. You feel the tension between your past and your future, and you recognize that the next step carries the potential to redefine your life. This is the moment she governs, the moment when your will is tested and your identity begins to evolve. Hecate watches from the threshold, offering guidance without force, ready to lead you deeper into the mysteries of transformation, intuition, and the uncharted depths of your own consciousness. Darkness has always been a space that humans struggle to understand. It triggers instinctive reactions rooted in survival, stirring fear, uncertainty, and vulnerability. Yet the darkness Hecate governs is not a realm of malevolent forces. It is a psychological territory where the mind stores everything it has not yet processed. It holds forgotten memories, repressed emotions, unresolved conflicts, and unrealized potential. When Hecate is described as a goddess of the night, it is not because she embodies corruption or terror. She presides over the realm that humans avoid, the inner landscape that must be confronted for genuine transformation to occur. The shadow is the part of the psyche that forms when a person pushes away aspects of themselves they are not ready to face. This suppressed material does not disappear. It becomes active beneath awareness, influencing behavior, decisions, and perceptions. Hecate governs this realm, not to frighten, but to guide. Her presence in darkness represents the ability to navigate the unknown without losing direction. She brings awareness to the parts of self that remain hidden, urging individuals to explore them with courage instead of fear. In this sense, her dominion over night symbolizes psychological mastery, the strength to walk through inner uncertainty without collapsing into confusion. The human relationship with the shadow is complex. People fear what they cannot control, yet growth demands confronting exactly what triggers that fear. Hecate does not eliminate the darkness. She illuminates it with a steady flame that reveals what needs to be acknowledged. Her torch is not blinding or harsh. It is precise, offering just enough clarity to prevent the mind from becoming overwhelmed. She empowers individuals to understand their hidden patterns instead of becoming controlled by them. The darkness becomes a place of revelation rather than threat when she leads the way through it. Ancient depictions show Hecate standing at night with both torches raised, symbolizing the moment self-awareness emerges from the shadow. The night around her is not a void. It is a rich field of insight waiting to be uncovered. Her presence transforms the dark into a realm of potential, where aspects of identity can be reclaimed and integrated. This does not mean the process is comfortable. Confronting the shadow requires honesty and willingness to examine truths that may challenge oneself, but the discomfort signals movement toward deeper clarity. Hecate guides this journey with unwavering steadiness, proving that the path through darkness leads to self-possession rather than despair. The association between Hecate and the dead further reinforces her role in shadow work. In ancient belief, the spirits of the dead were not inherently dangerous. They represented unfinished stories, unresolved emotions, and the continuity of memory. Hecate guiding the dead symbolizes her ability to lead individuals through psychological remnants of their past. She reveals the patterns inherited from earlier experiences, helping people understand how old wounds influence their present lives. The journey through shadow is a journey through memory, and Hecate facilitates this process with precision, ensuring the past becomes a source of wisdom rather than a source of paralysis. Her presence in liminal spaces highlights her connection to transformation. The shadow marks the boundary between the life you have lived and the identity you are evolving into. It contains the lessons needed for growth, but these lessons remain inaccessible until you are willing to descend into that territory with awareness. Hecate's governance of darkness reflects her role in guiding individuals through these internal thresholds. She stands at the entry point, offering the courage required to step inside and the clarity needed to emerge stronger. Darkness becomes a teacher rather than an enemy when approached with her guidance. Modern psychological theories align closely with Hecate's ancient symbolism. The shadow, as described by depth psychology, is not a destructive force, but a reservoir of repressed strength, creativity, and insight. Avoiding it leads to stagnation, while confronting it leads to integration. Hecate personifies the force that makes integration possible. She brings the hidden into visibility and the fragmented into harmony. Her presence challenges the belief that darkness must always be associated with danger. Instead, she demonstrates that it is a gateway to self-discovery, a place where latent potential becomes accessible and where emotional wounds begin to heal. Hecate does not rule darkness because she belongs to it. She rules it because she understands it. She walks through shadow with confidence, not because she is untouched by it, but because she knows that darkness holds the material from which transformation is shaped. She teaches that fear loses its power when examined with awareness. She shows that the unknown becomes manageable when approached with intention. She reveals that the shadow is not a prison but an archive of everything needed to grow into a more complete version of oneself. To walk with Hecate through darkness is to recognize that the parts of yourself you avoid are the very parts that will set you free. It is to understand that illumination comes from within, guided by the steady flame she lifts before you. Through her, the night becomes a landscape of truth, and the shadow becomes a companion on the journey toward wholeness. The Crossroads has always carried a mysterious weight in human consciousness. Long before any written myth defined its purpose, people instinctively sensed that places where paths intersect held a unique energy. The crossroads symbolized the moment where direction must be chosen, where certainty dissolves, and where the unknown asserts its presence with unmistakable force. In ancient thought, this was not simply a location in the physical world. It was a spiritual mechanism, a place where the human mind became more receptive, more awake, and more capable of perceiving truths normally hidden beneath routine awareness. When Hecate became the guardian of these places, she was recognized as the intelligence governing transitions, decisions, and internal alignment. To stand at a crossroads is to confront freedom in its rawest form. Paths stretch outward, each one carrying consequences that extend far beyond the moment of choice. The tension felt at such a place is not accidental. Humans instinctively sense that a crossroads is a point where the future can shift direction. Ancient societies understood this psychological pressure and ritualized it. They placed offerings at crossroads not as acts of fear, but as acknowledgments of the seriousness of choice. These rituals functioned like early forms of psychological grounding. By placing offerings to Hecate, people externalized the weight of their decision, allowing their minds to move from confusion into clarity. The act served as a way to step consciously into the threshold rather than stumbling through it. Hecate's presence at crossroads reflects her mastery of transitions. A crossroads requires evaluating the past, confronting the present moment with honesty, and anticipating the future with awareness. This mirrors the internal process required during personal transformation. The crossroads becomes a symbol of psychological restructuring when a life reaches a point where the next step determines identity, relationships, and direction. The inner world becomes charged with conflict. Hecate's guardianship of these moments reveals how she operates. She does not dictate the choice. She sharpens perception so the right choice becomes visible. Her torch illuminates truth. Her keys unlock understanding, and her presence forces the mind to confront its own motives with integrity. Ancient practices at the crossroads were far more sophisticated than simple superstition. People used these rituals as tools for introspection. They approached the crossroads at night because the darkness heightened sensory awareness and reduced external distraction. The mind became more attuned to intuition in these conditions, allowing insights that remained inaccessible in ordinary circumstances. Approaching Hecate at the crossroads was a psychological descent into deeper consciousness. It required stillness, vulnerability, and willingness to listen. The offerings left behind symbolize releasing old identities, unresolved conflicts, or limiting beliefs. It was a deliberate act of letting go, so the mind could enter a new phase unburdened by what no longer served growth. In many regions, crossroads became places where major decisions were made. People sought guidance there when they reached moments of personal crises or transformation. This was not done impulsively. They understood that the environment would amplify their intuition and force clarity. The presence of Hecate made the experience more structured. She offered symbolic guidance through dreams, intuition, and signs encountered on the path. When someone approached the crossroads with sincerity, they opened themselves to deeper layers of awareness that remained dormant in ordinary life. Hecate's presence represented the inner voice that speaks with authority only when one steps outside familiar patterns and into the tension of uncertainty. Crossroads also served as places where old cycles were consciously ended. In personal transformation, endings are as important as beginnings. Without acknowledging what must be released, growth becomes impossible. The crossroads represented the moment of severance. Under Hecate's watch, individuals confronted what needed to be left behind. This could be an attachment, a belief, a relationship, or a behavior. The tension of the crossroads forced clarity. There was no room for denial. The presence of multiple paths required individuals to face the truth of their situation and recognize which direction aligned with the identity they were becoming. In modern life, the physical crossroads may not hold the same ritualistic meaning, but the psychological experience remains unchanged. People stand at metaphorical crossroads every time they confront a major decision, undergo internal change, or question the trajectory of their lives. The same psychological forces that shaped ancient rituals still operate within the human mind. The crossroads is a universal pattern. It emerges whenever a person senses the need for transformation. Hecate's symbolism becomes a guide for navigating these moments with clarity rather than fear. The crossroads teaches that direction must be chosen with awareness. It reminds individuals that every path leads to a different version of themselves. It exposes the truth that indecision is itself a choice, one that keeps a person trapped between who they were and who they must become. Hecate's presence at the crossroads represents the intelligence necessary to break this paralysis. She embodies the courage to step forward, the wisdom to recognize the right path, and the strength to leave behind what prevents growth. When viewed through this lens, the crossroads becomes more than a symbol. It becomes a spiritual technology, a tool for self-examination, inner alignment, and decisive transformation. It offers a framework for understanding how choices shape destiny and how awareness shapes identity. Standing at the crossroads under Hecate's watch is an encounter with truth, a moment where clarity rises from the tension of uncertainty and guides the individual to the path that calls to their deepest self. Hecate's presence within the household is one of the most overlooked aspects of her identity, yet it reveals a profound dimension of her power. People often imagine her only as a figure of night, sorcery, and crossroads. But in the ancient world, she was also a protector of the home, a guardian of thresholds, birth, family stability, and the invisible currents that shaped daily life. This dual role shows that Hecate's essence is not confined to the dramatic moments of transformation. She governs the quiet, intimate spaces where identity forms, where emotional patterns develop, and where psychological foundations are shaped long before a person ever reaches a crossroads in the external world. The household in antiquity was not merely a physical structure. It was a living psychological environment. Every doorway represented a symbolic boundary between safety and exposure, inner life and outer world, the known and the unknown. Hecate's position at the threshold of the home demonstrates her role as guardian of transitions, both subtle and profound. She protected the family from unseen forces, but her deeper function was to guard the internal structure of the self. The home is where a person first learns about identity, relationships, fear, security, and boundaries. By presiding over this space, Hecate governed the earliest stages of psychological formation. Her presence in childbirth rituals highlights her influence over beginnings. Birth is one of the most powerful thresholds in existence. It marks the moment a soul moves from one realm to another, crossing into life through a gateway both physical and symbolic. Hecate's role in midwifery and early life protection reflects her mastery of transitions that reshape identity from the very start. She does not simply guide adults through. She oversees the formation of the inner self, ensuring that the earliest imprints of life carry protection, clarity, and strength. Her involvement in childbirth demonstrates her authority over beginnings, which are often more defining than any later event. In many households, small shrines dedicated to Hecate were placed near doors or boundaries. These were not expressions of fear. They were acknowledgments of the invisible forces that influence emotional life. Ancient people understood that the home contained spirits of memory, ancestry, conflict, longing, and growth. Hecate oversaw these forces, guiding them into harmony rather than letting them become sources of chaos. Her presence stabilized the inner environment, making the home a place where individuals could grow without being overwhelmed by hidden tensions. She was the guardian of psychological balance within the family structure. Her domestic role also intersects with her association with dogs. Dogs were placed at household thresholds, not merely for physical protection, but for spiritual sensitivity. They sensed subtle shifts in energy, warning of unseen disturbances long before humans perceived them. Hecate's connection to dogs symbolizes her awareness of what lies beneath perception. She sees the emotional and psychological patterns forming within the home, often long before they erupt into major crises. Her guardianship therefore involves early intervention. She reveals subtle imbalances so they can be addressed before they grow into destructive forces. In this sense, Hecate acts as a stabilizer of emotional foundations. The paradox of her identity emerges here. Hecate governs both domestic calm and transformative upheaval. She protects stability while guiding individuals through profound change. This duality reveals her deeper purpose. She understands that transformation cannot occur without a foundation, and stability cannot endure without a household represents the roots of identity. Crossroads represent the branches reaching toward unknown futures. Hecate stands at both places because she governs the entire spectrum of human experience. She supports the internal structures that make transformation possible, while also guiding the moments when these structures must evolve. Her presence within the home also highlights the importance of internal boundaries. A household without boundaries becomes chaotic. A household with rigid boundaries becomes suffocating. Hecate's role at the threshold teaches the necessity of balance. She protects the inner world from external intrusion, while ensuring that fear does not trap a person inside their own limitations. The threshold is the place where openness meets safety. It is where individuals learn how to let in what nourishes them and keep out what harms them. This psychological skill is essential for healthy relationships, personal growth, and emotional resilience. In modern psychological terms, Hecate's household role corresponds to the formation of inner security. The home is where people first learn whether the world is safe, whether their emotions are valid, and whether they have the right to exist as themselves. These early lessons shape how individuals navigate conflict, intimacy, and self. Hecate protects this formative space, not to impose order, but to ensure that the internal foundation remains strong enough to support later transformation. Her guardianship offers a stable ground from which individuals can explore their identity without fear of collapse. Hecate's presence in the household does not contradict her association with the unknown. It completes it. She understands that transformation is not sustainable without the grounding influence of security. She protects the places where identity takes root so that when a person reaches the crossroads, they possess the inner strength needed to choose with clarity rather than desperation. By governing both beginnings and thresholds, she reveals that personal evolution is a continuous cycle weaving the intimate and the immense, the quiet and the profound, the home and the unknown. Hecate's association with witchcraft has shaped her modern image more than any other aspect of her mythology. Yet this connection is often oversimplified or distorted by fear-driven interpretations that have lingered across centuries. To understand her true relationship with sorcery, it is necessary to look beyond stereotypes and into the psychological and spiritual meaning behind practices once labeled as magical. In ancient times, magic was not seen as chaotic rebellion against the natural order. It was understood as the art of working with hidden forces that influence both the external world and the inner landscape of the mind. Hecate's presence within this domain arose because she understood and governed these forces with clarity unmatched by any other deity. When ancient texts and traditions describe Hecate as the patron of witches, they are acknowledging her mastery over the unseen mechanisms of transformation. Witches were not figures of fear. They were individuals trained to perceive the subtle energies under the surface of ordinary life. They understood the power of intention, ritual, psychological focus, and symbolism. They knew how to interpret signs, navigate transitions, and access knowledge that others ignored or feared. Hecate became their guide because she embodied the wisdom necessary to work effectively with these forces. She did not encourage chaos. She provided structure, discipline, and clarity within realms that could easily overwhelm the untrained mind. Much of the misunderstanding surrounding Hecate comes from later interpretations shaped by cultural shifts that feared anything beyond rigid religious frameworks. As society became increasingly suspicious of intuitive knowledge, emotional depth, and personal power, the practices once guided by Hecate were rebranded as dangerous or immoral. Yet the essence of these practices remains profoundly psychological. Rituals attributed to her were designed to bring hidden thoughts into the open, strengthen intuition, release emotional burdens, and guide individuals through internal transformation. When viewed through this lens, witchcraft becomes a metaphor for self-awareness rather than a threat. Hecate's role within it becomes the role of a mentor guiding the mind through complex inner terrain. Her association with herbs, potions, and natural magic reflects ancient understanding of the interconnectedness between body, mind, and environment. Herbal knowledge was a form of early medicine rooted in observation, intuition, and generational wisdom. Hecate governed this knowledge because it required the ability to see connections others overlooked. Sorcery linked to her name was not an attempt to overpower nature but to work in harmony with it. The individuals who followed her path learned to recognize patterns in plants, weather, seasons, and psychological states. They used these insights to heal, protect, and transform. Hecate's guidance ensured that such power was used with intention, precision, and respect. Her connection to necromancy, another misunderstood aspect of her mythology, did not involve dominating spirits or inviting chaos. It referred to the ability to navigate memory, ancestry, and unresolved emotional remnants. In ancient thought, communication with the dead symbolized deep engagement with the past. Hecate guided individuals through this process to help them understand the influences shaping their lives. This was a form of psychological excavation long before modern therapy existed. She revealed patterns passed down through generations, helping people break cycles that restricted their growth. What later cultures feared as dangerous was, in its original context, a profound practice of self-understanding. Hecate's reputation evolved over time as the symbolism of magic shifted from respected knowledge to feared taboo, yet her true essence remained intact beneath the layers of misunderstanding. She was never a goddess of chaos. She was a goddess of mastery. She governed the realms others were afraid to enter, offering stability where most saw instability, clarity where most saw confusion, and empowerment where most saw danger. Those drawn to her path were often individuals who sensed the complexity of human experience and sought tools to navigate it consciously. Her influence offered strength, protection, and insight, transforming fear into wisdom and uncertainty into purposeful action. In many ancient communities, witches were midwives, healers, counselors, and keepers of local knowledge. Their connection to Hecate reflected her presence in every domain requiring intuition and sensitivity to invisible forces. They turned to her when dealing with illness, emotional turmoil, conflict, or transformation. Her rituals were not theatrical performances, but structured methods for focusing the mind, accessing deeper truths, and releasing internal burdens. The sorcery associated with her served as a means of psychological integration, allowing individuals to bring harmony to parts of themselves that remain fragmented or hidden. When cultures changed and fear replaced understanding, Hecate's connection to magic was distorted into a symbol of danger. Yet her essence continued to attract those who sensed that knowledge suppressed by fear often holds the key to personal power. Individuals seeking self-awareness, healing, and transformation continue to find resonance in her symbolism because she embodies the ability to navigate complexity with wisdom rather than fear. Her presence in witchcraft represents the courage to enter the unknown with intention, the discipline to master inner forces, and the clarity to distinguish truth from illusion. Re-examining Hecate's reputation reveals a powerful truth. She was never a goddess of frightful magic. She was the ruler of hidden knowledge, the guide of intuition, and the guardian of the mind's deepest layers. Those who followed her were not agents of chaos, but individuals committed to understanding the forces that shape human experience. In this, light, Hecate becomes both a guide and a mirror, showing that the forces we fear within ourselves are often the very forces that hold our greatest potential for growth and transformation. Hecate's symbols and sacred animals form a complex language that reveals the depth of her influence. Each element associated with her is not merely decorative mythology, but a psychological map encoded with meaning. Ancient societies chose these symbols with precision, understanding that they represented forces working within the human mind. When interpreted correctly, they reveal aspects of transformation, intuition, memory, and personal evolution that define her essence. Exploring these symbols is not an exercise in metaphor, but a journey into the architecture of interchange, guided by one of the most multifaceted deities in the ancient world. The torch stands at the center of her iconography because it represents the mind's capacity to illuminate what is hidden. The torch does not remove darkness. It reveals the truth within it, allowing the individual to see what lies beneath fear or confusion. This symbol shows how Hecate guides through inner turmoil. She does not promise comfort, but offers clarity. The flame burns with precision, exposing motives, memories, and desires buried within the psyche. It is the tool that prevents a person from wandering blindly through uncertainty. The torch signifies the moment awareness pierces through emotional fog, allowing a person to make decisions grounded in truth rather than avoidance. Keys are another dominant symbol, representing her authority over thresholds both internal and external. A key is never used randomly. It is a sign of selective access. Hecate governs the doors within the mind that remain closed until an individual is ready to confront what lies behind them. These keys open memories, insights, and potentials that have been locked away. They represent the controlled entry into deeper layers of consciousness. When Hecate is depicted holding keys, she is portrayed as the keeper of psychological initiation. She determines the pace of transformation, ensuring that individuals unlock parts of themselves in a sequence that fosters growth rather than overwhelm. Her connection with serpents reflects the continuous cycle of shedding and renewal. The serpent is not a symbol of danger, but of regeneration. It represents the instinctual intelligence that guides transformation on a primal level. Shedding the old skin mirrors the process of releasing outdated beliefs and emotional patterns. The serpent moves between cracks and hidden spaces, symbolizing the ability to navigate the unconscious with fluidity. Hecate's serpents represent the wisdom that emerges when fear is replaced with curiosity, showing that the deepest layers of the psyche are not to be avoided but explored with respect and insight. Dogs are among her most well-known symbols, and their presence reveals a profound truth about her character. In ancient times, dogs were valued for their ability to perceive what humans could not. They sensed shifts in energy, detected danger before it appeared, and remained loyal guardians of the household. Their connection to Hecate reflects her function as a protector of thresholds and as a guide through unseen realms. Dogs howl at moments of transition, sensing changes in atmosphere and unseen presences. They represent intuition in its rawest form, the instinctual awareness that rises when logic cannot explain what is unfolding. Hecate's dogs symbolize the alertness required during transformation, urging individuals to trust their inner signals rather than dismiss them. Another symbol deeply linked to her is the crossroads itself. While often viewed as a physical intersection, it carries a deeper symbolic weight. The crossroads represents the convergence of different psychological states. It signifies the moment when an individual stands between identities, possibilities, and emotional truths. This symbol encapsulates Hecate's mastery over transitions. When she stands at a crossroads, she is depicted as the force capable of perceiving every path simultaneously. This reflects the clarity needed to make transformative decisions. The crossroads symbolizes the tension of choice, the necessity of awareness, and the potential for profound change when a person steps into the unknown with purpose. The black color associated with Hecate does not represent malevolence, but depth. Black is the color of the unseen, the fertile void where new identities begin to form. It is the psychological space where raw emotion, intuition, and memory interact without the interference of external distraction. Hecate's association with black honors her dominion over this fertile inner landscape. It represents her ability to guide individuals through periods when clarity has not yet formed, but transformation is underway beneath the surface. The color signifies the womb of potential, the beginning of new insight, and the quiet force that shapes change from within. The offerings given to her in ancient rituals hold symbolic meaning as well. Foods such as eggs, garlic, honey, and fish were not chosen at random. They represented life, protection, sweetness, and depth. These offerings functioned as psychological anchors, allowing individuals to acknowledge the emotional and spiritual forces influencing their lives. They symbolized the exchange between conscious intention and unseen transformation. Through these offerings, people externalized their internal conflicts, releasing them into Hecate's domain so they could move forward with greater clarity. This act reflected an early understanding of how ritual can support psychological alignment. Her plants and herbs carry similar significance. Yew, cypress, and certain night-blooming flowers were linked to her because they thrive in darkness or carry associations with memory and transformation. These plants embody endurance, introspection, and the ability to draw strength from hidden sources. They symbolize the resilience required for inner work, reminding individuals that growth often occurs in silence. Beneath the surface of ordinary awareness, Hecate's connection to these plants highlights her role as a guide through the subtle processes of emotional and spiritual development. Together, these symbols form an intricate system of meaning. Each one reflects an aspect of transformation, awareness, or inner navigation. None of them exist for aesthetic purpose alone. They function as tools that help individuals understand the forces shaping their lives. The animals and items associated with Hecate reveal her as a deity of profound psychological depth, offering guidance not through authority but through illumination, insight, and the ability to see what lies beyond the limits of ordinary perception. Hecate's presence did not fade when ancient temples fell or when her rituals were absorbed into new religious landscapes. Deities associated with transition, intuition, and the shadow do not disappear. because their domain is not external. It lives within the human psyche. Her influence persists because the internal thresholds she governs continue to shape human experience. Modern individuals encounter her through intuitive signals rather than formal ritual. Yet, the essence of the encounter remains unchanged. Hecate appears when a person stands at a turning point, faces internal conflict, or senses a shift unfolding in their life that demands awareness. Her presence is subtle, precise, and unmistakably transformative. One of the primary ways she appears today is through these are moments when patterns align so clearly that they interrupt routine perception. A symbol repeats itself. A name surfaces at unusual times. An image, animal, or message emerges in ways too precise to dismiss as coincidence. Synchronicities are psychological markers that signal a deeper process at work. They reflect the moment when the unconscious mind pushes insight toward the surface, using external events to amplify the message. When these patterns involve symbols connected to Hecate, such as crossroads, keys, torches, serpents, or dogs, it often indicates that the individual is moving toward a significant threshold. The experience becomes a form of inner guidance, urging awareness toward change that is ready to unfold. Dreams offer another powerful way she communicates. Dreams are the language of the unconscious, and Hecate governs precisely the realm where dreams originate. When she appears in dreams, the imagery is often layered with meaning rather than literal form. She may appear as a figure holding light in darkness, as a guide leading through uncertain landscapes, or as a voice urging a choice that feels overwhelming in waking life. Her presence in dreams does not evoke fear but clarity. The dream becomes a map of unresolved conflict or untapped potential. Individuals often wake with a sense of direction or a heightened awareness of decisions they have been avoiding. These dreams are invitations to engage with inner truth rather than dismiss uncomfortable emotions. Threshold moments are among the most profound ways people experience her influence. These moments occur when a person senses that one chapter of life is ending and another is beginning. They may manifest as sudden shifts in perspective, unexpected opportunities, emotional breakthroughs, or intense periods of It often brings disorientation, questioning, and emotional intensity. But beneath the discomfort lies a sense of inevitability. Something must change. Something is ready to transform. Hecate governs these moments because they require clarity, courage, and the willingness to step into an unfamiliar identity. Her presence aligns the inner world with the direction required for growth. Hecate's influence also appears in heightened intuition. People often describe moments when they sense danger before it arrives, understand truth without evidence, or feel guided toward certain decisions with strong inner certainty. This intuitive force reflects her presence within the subconscious. Hecate does not communicate through loud commands. She works through subtle awareness, the quiet voice that emerges when distractions fall away. This sensitivity often increases during periods of transformation, signaling that the individual must rely on instinct rather than external validation. The intuitive pull becomes a compass, guiding choices that align with deeper purpose. Another modern manifestation of her energy appears when individuals confront their shadow. This confrontation may arise through emotional triggers, patterns repeating despite conscious attempts to change, or a sudden awareness of internal conflict. When suppressed emotions surface with unusual intensity, when fears demand attention, or when old identities begin to dissolve. These are signs that Hecate's domain has become active. She governs the process of bringing the unconscious into awareness. Modern individuals experience this as the pressure to resolve unresolved patterns or examine parts of themselves they have avoided. This is not punishment. It is an invitation to integration. People also encounter Hecate during significant losses or endings. Endings mark the collapse of old structures, forcing individuals to reassess the foundation of their identity. Grief, separation, career shifts, and major life changes create psychological instability that mirrors ancient thresholds. Hecate's influence emerges in the clarity that follows the breakdown. She guides the mind through the dismantling of what no longer fits, providing the insight necessary to rebuild with greater authenticity. These moments become turning points that define the course of a person's future. In daily life, Hecate may appear through symbols in the environment. A black dog approaches during a walk at night. A key is found unexpectedly. A crossroads appears during a journey. The house feels different at the threshold. Sudden awareness strikes during darkness or during moments of profound silence. These experiences are not supernatural theater. They are psychological signals amplified by external cues. Hecate uses symbolic language because the unconscious mind responds powerfully to symbols. These signs encourage individuals to pay attention, to slow down, and to examine what is shifting beneath the surface of their awareness. Modern encounters with Hecate are not reserved for those who consider themselves spiritual. They occur wherever inner transformation takes place. Any person standing at a decision that will reshape their life, confronting shadow material, experiencing intuitive clarity, or recognizing symbolic patterns is engaging with her domain. Hecate remains relevant because she reflects universal human experiences. Her presence today is an extension of her ancient role, guiding individuals through the most significant internal transitions with the same steadiness, intelligence, and depth that defined her mythology for thousands of years. This final chapter leads into the deepest aspect of Hecate's guidance, the moment when understanding shifts from concept to embodiment. The three keys form one of her most enduring symbols because they represent the structure of inner initiation. Each key opens a psychological door, granting access to a different layer of self. This ritual is not a reenactment of ancient ceremony, but a guided reflection designed to draw the listener into the same inner territory those rituals once revealed. It becomes a personal encounter with transition, clarity, and the quiet intelligence that rises when the mind allows itself to cross into unfamiliar yet necessary spaces. The three keys serve as markers on this journey, creating a path through the layers of the self that must align for transformation to become lasting. Begin with the first key, the key of release. This key opens the door behind you, the door that holds everything you have carried until this moment. The mind stores layers of identity shaped by memory, expectation, fear, and unresolved emotion. These layers become heavy over time, pressing against the ability to move forward. To hold the first key is to acknowledge the weight you have been carrying. It requires honesty about what no longer serves your growth. The first key urges the question that many avoid: what must be released to step into the life you are becoming? This is not about erasing the past. It is about loosening the grip of patterns that have completed their purpose. The threshold of release is never easy, because even pain can feel familiar. Yet Hecate stands behind this door, reminding you that the past does not define your future unless you continue to hold it. The second key is the key of alignment. This key opens the door of the present moment, the space where awareness sharpens and identity adjusts. Alignment demands that you confront the truth of who you are now without stories, excuses, or illusions. It requires clarity about your priorities, your boundaries, your desires, and the reality you inhabit. Alignment is not passive acceptance. It is deliberate awareness. When you turn this key, you choose presence over distraction, intention over impulse, authenticity over pretense. Hecate's torch illuminates this door because the present moment is the only place where transformation becomes tangible. You stand at this threshold recognizing that every decision, every thought, and every action contributes to the direction your life will take. The second key holds the power to shape that direction with integrity. The third key is the key of becoming. This key opens the door ahead, the one that leads into what has not yet formed. The future is often approached with anxiety or forced certainty, But the key of becoming invites a different posture. It asks you to enter the unknown with grounded awareness, trusting your capacity to navigate whatever emerges. Becoming is the process of stepping into potential with both humility and strength. It does not demand prediction. It requires willingness. When this key turns, it signals your readiness to evolve beyond old identities, expanding into a more truthful version of yourself. Hecate stands at this door as well, not to dictate your path, but to ensure that you walk forward with clarity rather than fear. The key of becoming is the key of courage. These three keys form a sequence because transformation requires structure, release clears the past, alignment stabilizes the present, becoming calls the future into form. When these elements move in harmony, the individual gains the ability to transition without fragmentation. The ritual is not symbolic abstraction. It is a psychological process encoded in myth because myth provided ancient cultures with the language to describe profound internal change. Hecate's role in this process is to guide without controlling, to illuminate without blinding, to support without restraining. She creates the conditions in which the mind can see clearly enough to choose its path with intention. To enact the ritual internally, imagine yourself standing before three doors arranged in a semicircle. The air is still, the ground beneath you feels steady yet charged with potential. You sense that this space exists both within and around you. Hecate stands at the center, silent, observant, carrying the torch that reflects not on the world outside but on the truth emerging from within. She does not offer instructions. She waits for your awareness to rise to the surface. The keys appear in your hands, not because they were granted from outside, but because they have always belonged to you. The ritual begins not with action, but with recognition. Approach the first door. As you stand before it, notice the memories, beliefs, or patterns that have shaped the path behind you. Some hold meaning. Others have become burdens. The key of release fits naturally into the lock because the act of letting go is always available, even when resisted. As the door opens, imagine the weight lifting, not erased, but transformed into wisdom. Step back, knowing that what is carried forward now is intentional rather than automatic. Move to the second door. The present moment feels sharper, clearer. The air around it holds the density of truth. Place the key of alignment into the lock. As the door opens, imagine the sensation of clarity expanding within you. Feel the alignment between thought, emotion, and intention forming with quiet strength. This door reveals not who you were or who you might become, but who you are now. Stand in that recognition with steadiness. Finally, approach the third door. The unknown rests behind it, not as a threat, but as unshaped potential. The key of becoming feels lighter in your hand, yet more powerful than the others. When the door opens, imagine a path stretching forward into possibilities that are not yet defined. Feel the pulse of courage rising from within. This is the threshold that calls you into your next identity. Step forward with the awareness that you are no longer guided by fear, but by the clarity shaped through release and alignment. This ritual does not end when the doors close behind you. It continues as long as you carry the awareness gained through each key. Hecate remains at the threshold, not as a distant mythological figure, but as the archetype of transformation active within your own consciousness. The three keys remind you that every moment of your life offers a new threshold, a new chance to release what restricts you, align with what is true, and become what you are capable of becoming. If this message touched your spirit, let your light join ours. Subscribe and walk with me through the sacred seasons. Blessed be